let's catch up with Marc Stein. He's an NBA correspondent for Substack. That's where he writes. And I would encourage you to download this new podcast he has with Chris Haynes. You know Chris Haynes, he does Sideline for TNT. So Mark and Chris Haynes, two guys who've covered the league for years, all the insight you need. It's called This League Uncut. Remember, This League Uncut. And instead of like tweets, they actually talk about like super depth about everything going on in the league. And Mark joins us now in the herd on Fox Sports Radio and the iHeart Radio app. I was trolling James Harden on IG. No, I'm kidding now, but he put out a IG message. Okay, and you're much hipper in the IG. What does this actually mean? Right? I feel like one of those explorers in Egypt looking at hieroglyphics. Been comfortable for so long, time to get uncomfortable. What does that mean for James Harden? What's the message to the rest of the NBA?
If I am your IG translator, this show and your career could be in trouble. I mean, look, I think what you can glean from it is James Harden wants to go to the Clippers. He's made that clear. We've heard the Sixers publicly lobbying him to amend that stance. Joel Embiid has said it. Patrick Beverley just got to Philly. He said it. Daryl Morey went on the radio in Philly, and he said it. They're all hoping to change Harden's mind, but Harden's mind, he is trying to send the message back. You can't change my mind. I want to be traded. I want out. But that word uncomfortable, we don't have to rewind too far to remember how uncomfortable he made it for the Houston Rockets when he wanted out, and how uncomfortable he made it for the Brooklyn Nets when he wanted out. Only he knows how far he's willing to go when training camp comes around. Does he really want to make things uncomfortable for the Sixers as well? But I would say he's dealing with the front office that has shown that it has as much or more patience than anybody else on the NBA map. We all remember the Ben Simmons saga, and you had know-it-alls like you and I yelling at Daryl Morey, take the trades that are on the table. You've got to get something for Simmons. This can't go on. And Daryl Morey waited all the way to the trade deadline in February, and he got the trade he wanted for James Harden then. So, I don't think the Sixers are going to just yield. And, Daryl Morey himself is known for being okay with being uncomfortable too. So I think we're just at the early stages of this standoff, and this will not be the last IG post that us old men are trying to decipher.
Okay, how about this? Do the Clippers want him?
I think they want him to a degree, but if you also study Daryl Morey's trade history, he's not. He went on 97.5 FM in Philly, like he did during the Ben Simmons saga a couple of years ago, and was very open about it, as open as you'll hear a GM. Daryl Morey said, we're not trading Harden unless we get a star back, or unless we clearly get the pieces that we can flip to get a star. The description he used was he wants a top flight running mate for Joel Embiid, because Harden is that guy right now. Now they have Tyrese Maxey emerging, but all the word around the league is that the Sixers ask for a Harden trade. It's a pretty high bar to hit right now. So there isn't exactly a line of teams forming. Let's put it like that.
Yeah, and look, the Clippers need a point guard, and it is interesting that it would reunite him with Russell Westbrook. That friendship didn't end well in Houston, although Westbrook's in a completely different position, essentially playing on a minimum deal. So am I reading this wrong? Would Westbrook be his backup? Would that be the plan?
Yeah, I don't think Westbrook would start most likely if Harden comes in, but I guess it would also depend on, can the Clippers do this trade by themselves? I would think they're going to have to bring in at least a third team, maybe a fourth team, and it doesn't feel close at all right now. And that's really the reality with all of these trade watches that we're on in the NBA right now. Damian Lillard, James Harden, Pascal Siakam, their names have been frequently discussed in trade scenarios, and we know that in two of these cases, Lillard and Harden that they actually have lodged trade requests and want to be moved. But, this has not been a week of high activity in the NBA.
Part of the new collective bargaining agreement, as you know, Marc Stein joining us. He writes for Substack. His podcast with Chris Haynes is called This League Uncut. Incredible depth of insight into everything around the NBA. You know this, I know this, but I don't know if the common fan understands that the new collective bargaining agreement, which goes into effect, at the end of this year?
No, it's in effect.
In effect, right? So so the reason for a lot of these trades and movements is because if you want to get away from that second tier, right? The second apron, it's a luxury tax thing or a tax on your salary thing. But the other thing is that they created these supermax contracts, and the idea behind it is all of these small market clubs are like, we can't be a farm system for the Lakers and a farm system for the pick the newest hottest or the Miami Heat, etc., right? Or to keep our guys. But that goes directly in conflict with what, Damian Lillard ultimately is going to wave the white flag and likely go play for the Miami Heat. So I guess the question is it still going to be business as usual moving forward, where player takes the big contract despite the home, and then after getting the big contract, a year, 2 years later, they ask to be traded, even though the whole idea of this collective bargaining agreement is for the Utahs and Oklahoma Cities and San Antonios of the world to be able to keep the players that they grow?
Well, the way it was really interpreted by many teams around the league is that this was designed to basically end super teams, that you could have two max guys, but if you tried to have a third, it's going to be really hard to build around them because of all the restrictions when you cross the first tax apron, and then really when you cross the second tax apron. When you cross that second tax apron, you just lose almost every single team building measure there is around your main guys. But the crazy part is, as for all the fear of the second apron and all the concern, I think on this show we've talked numerous times about how expensive it will be for Boston just to keep Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum together. They'll probably never have as deep a team as they just had if they re-sign those two guys to the max deals they're eligible for. But what we've seen Phoenix go a zillion miles past the second apron. We see Miami trying to get Dame Lillard, which would give them three basically max guys with Butler, Adebayo, and Dame, and then how are they going to build around them? And the Clippers, now this would only be for 1 year because Harden only has 1 year left on his deal, but now, the Clippers, before the draft, they were said to be weighing the option, at least considering the option of trading Paul George and breaking up the Kawhi-Paul George tandem. Now the Clippers are going the other way, and they want, they're considering trading for Harden, which would give them three very, very expensive players. So it's interesting that even with these restrictions coming in, next season we could still have three super teams, and we really weren't supposed to have any anymore. It's supposed to be more like what the Lakers are doing. You have LeBron James and you have AD, and those are your two max guys. And then the skill is, can you build around them? Can you get enough depth around them? If you manage the cap well, that's more the model that we're supposed to see in this new collective bargaining agreement. But it's interesting that, again, starting with the Suns, we're seeing teams that are defying the second apron. Zach Lowe calls it the lead apron.
Yeah, well, I mean, part of it is you have some of this new money, and the guys are, you get a guy, you spend $3 billion on a team. You're like, all right, I'm pot committed on the team. What the hell? Why not go for a championship when I buy this team? Let me ask you about this Draymond Green thing with things I didn't think we would talk about. Is Jordan Poole's dad calling out Draymond Green and a back and forth, because remember, Draymond said, well, I apologize to Jordan, but also to his family. And he's like, you didn't say anything to me all year. Now there's this Jonathan Kuminga doesn't have a relationship with Draymond Green. Like, look, I get it. I like Draymond. Colin obviously in business with Draymond, and he's a tremendous player. But like, we are getting to the point where, dude, it really feels like it's hard for people to deal with the ego of Draymond Green.
Well, I the first 3 years of the Warriors dynasty, I basically lived with that team. I was embedded with them for SportsCenter. I went almost everywhere they did. And, just to me, Draymond Green is an absolute winner. And, I think when you hear what Steve Kerr says about him and what Stephen Curry says about him, like, I just don't, that's what I'm listening to more. I certainly am not privy to whatever conversations there were or weren't last season between Draymond Green and Jordan Poole's family. I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I know that inside and out, but I'm just not buying that there's some huge lingering. They had a rough season last year and they didn't win. If they start winning again, like the Warriors have, I think a lot of this stuff goes away. And obviously Kuminga and Moody are still there. But just to me, I've in my time, the time that I've spent around that group, he's just such an integral part of what they do that, there's always noise around him. There are people who certainly, he's a polarizing figure on some levels. There are always going to be people who don't like some of the things that Draymond says and does, no question. But, again, I lean on not just the success, but the reverence that he is held in by the key figures in that organization.
Are you a buyer into the Lakers from this standpoint? When free agency ended, people were like, well, Lakers won free agency. And I thought Rob Pelinka did well. Like, I'm not criticizing, but there's only so much you can do. Like, that wasn't a championship team last year. It doesn't feel like it's going to be a championship team with LeBron a year older. They were healthy last year. But there seems to be, because people said they won free agency, that suddenly they're a championship caliber team. I don't see it. Where are you on the Lakers?
I think they had a very good offseason. I wouldn't say revolutionary. That's too far. But, you kind of underline the point within what you just said there. LeBron is heading into season 21, and Anthony Davis, when healthy, is the most disruptive defensive player in the league. But again, when healthy. So the reality is, as well as they've done sprucing up the roster, strengthening the supporting cast, it still rides on what LeBron and AD can do and can. We had Darvin Ham on with us. We did a live pod from Vegas, and Darvin Ham said he thinks Austin Reeves can reach all-star level someday. If Austin Reeves makes that kind of leap, then that might be the true difference maker beyond the moves of the offseason. Because ultimately, yes, this team is still going as far as LeBron and AD can take it. Even though if you look at where they were a year ago and you look at the rest of the roster now, it is in so much better shape. They have made a number of very nice moves.
Yeah, they've done the best they can with what they have, but that doesn't mean they're going to win a championship kind of because of it. That would be the last thing here, Mark, before we let you go. You mentioned that we're kind of in this no man's land where you're not really motivated to get this done. When's the next deadline? When's the next moment where, like a Lillard, a Harden? When is the next time where we should really go? This is real. This is really will heat up.
I think is really the next deadline, because do the Blazers want to bring? Do the Blazers are the Blazers willing to be patient enough to take this thing into the season and ask Damian Lillard, come to training camp, we're not ready to trade you. That's really the next, and that's not till October 2nd. Media day is October 2nd for 28 of the 30 teams in the league. So we've still got quite a bit of summer runway with Lillard, with Harden, and with Siakam. It's still not, I think if teams are still not sure Toronto's level of willingness to trade Siakam. Some teams think they are ready. Some teams aren't sure. But I would also say, don't forget, Donovan Mitchell got traded in early September last year. That the talks were serious at Summer League. They went quiet for a month plus, and then the trade erupted. So it can happen.
Marc Stein, NBA correspondent on Substack, and more importantly, check out his podcast with Chris Haynes. It's called This League Uncut, wherever you download your podcast. Mark, have a great weekend.